Hello and welcome back. My name is Abdul Qadir. If you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing. I do tutorials on Unreal Engine 4's blueprints, lighting, animations, and gameplay. If you are looking to create your first NPC, or in this case Brian, you are in the right place. So, Brian is a bald man whom I got from Mixamo, which is known for some, and maybe some of you don't really know what is Mixamo. In this video, we are going to get Brian, import him, import some animations for Brian, which you can get all of them for free from Mixamo. I'm gonna show you the steps on how to do that, and we are going to make him walk from point A to point B. And as you can see, he interchanges animations when he goes from idle to walking to idle when he reaches his goal. So let's get started. First of all, in order to animate a character, we need the model of the character. So what we need to do is to head to Mixamo, and you will have to sign up and log in. And after that, you are going to characters and choose one of the available free characters. There are lots of them. Some of them are monsters, some of them are zombies, some of them are fighters, ninjas, and such. What I have chosen is Brian, the bald man. Once you choose Brian, Brian will pop up in here. You can pan and you can check him out. If you like him and you want to follow my steps, you can download him. So obviously we are going to download an FBX, not for Unity but the normal FBX, and we want him in his original pose, not in the T-pose. So let's download that. Once the download is finished, we are going to go to animations and download some animations for Brian. So let's go to animation, and we want two animations because our project is only about going from idle to walking or from walking to idle. So what we want to find is an idle animation. You can choose any animation you want. I've personally chosen this one. So this is Brian, idle, breathing. You can change some of the settings here, but no need. This is good. And we need to download that. When we download that, obviously FBX without skin, because we already downloaded Brian. Frames per second is 30 and keyframe reproduction none. We should download that, and once that is downloaded, we are going to get our walking animation. Let's save this file as well and get our walking animation. There are a lot of animations that you can check out. Let's choose this one, for example. This one is good. What we need to do before downloading it is to set it in place. We have to check this checkbox because we want the animation to be in its place. Otherwise, it's gonna look so weird and it's gonna loop, and that's something we don't want. So let's download that without skin, FBX, 30 frames per second, no keyframe reproduction. Let's go ahead and download that as well. Once this is downloaded, we are going to open Unreal Engine and start our project. Once our Unreal project is up and running, we are going to import our models that we've just downloaded, which are 3 files, the model of Brian and 2 animations. So let's go ahead and import Brian's model first. and this will pop up. We will click import, and a lot of files are going to import with Brian, such as textures, materials, and you don't need to worry about that. Once Brian's model is uploaded, you will see a lot of files. 10 files are going to be imported to your project. To keep everything simple and clean, let's create a folder, name it Brian, and choose everything related to Brian and move it to this folder right here. And once that is done, we are going to create another folder and name it Brian Stuff and put everything related to Brian except for the model itself in that folder. So let's go ahead and move them here. Once everything is set, we are going to open Brian and check him up. So this is our model. Some of the models, if you didn't download the same model as I did, they might look a little bit weird because of the import settings. So in order to fix those, you are going to go into each material itself and change the blend mode to opaque instead of translucent. But for Brian himself, everything is good. He looks nice. He is bald. He doesn't care about anything related with hair. Next thing we are going to do is to import the two animations we've downloaded. So let's go ahead and import them, and the import options window will pop up. What we need to do is choose a skeleton for both of the animations. So we are obviously going to choose Brian's skeleton, and we can import all. The second animation will also choose Brian's skeleton. Now that we have Brian and the two animations in our project, we have something to work with. So let's go ahead and start our project. First thing we want to do is to create an AI controller, and to do that is by going to Blueprint class and tick all classes so we can see them all, and click Write AI, and we are going to choose AI controller. Once we've chosen that, we select it and let's name it Brian AI controller. Second thing we need to add is a enumerator, and to do that we can go to blueprints and add an enumeration. Let's name it Brian enum. Once you've done that, we have to go inside the enumerator and add a new enumerator, and let's name it walk, and the description we can put it walk as well. And we are going to save this. This enumerator is going to help us in the future, where we are going to create something other than the walking function, such as patrol or follow or anything. So every time we are going to create a new function for Brian, we are going to come here and add a new function and save it. Once that is done, we can get out of the enumerator and carry on with our work. Next thing we are going to do is to create a master AI blueprint, which is a blueprint class. We choose character and name it Brian Master AI. Once that is done, we are going to open this up, and we are going to have this blueprint, which is the blueprint that we are going to put inside the level. So in order to start, we are going to go to mesh, select Brian from here. Brian will pop up, and we have to put him inside his capsule. Let's go ahead and do that. In order to have him standing on the ground directly, we can choose the lowest point of the capsule and put his shoe over there. Let's compile and save and go back to perspective. Next thing we want to do is to create some animations for Brian. So what we are going to do is to go to our Brian's folder and go to animation and create an animation blueprint. The create animation blueprint window is going to open and we have to choose Brian's skeleton since we are working on Brian. Let's name this Brian AnimBP. Now we have a blueprint with Brian inside, and this animation blueprint is a little bit different than a regular blueprint because it contains the anim graph, which is where we are going to work. And if you look at the bottom right of the window, we can see the animations that we have downloaded and the animation that comes with Brian himself, which is going to be discarded. So these are our two animations. We can directly put something, drag and drop them in here, and we can plug them to the result, and if we compile, we will have an idle Brian. But this is not what we are going to do, because Brian is going to interchange between animations, specifically between idle and walking. So let's compile and save, and let's go back to Brian Master AI. Now that we are in Brian Master AI, we can go to the self and choose the AI controller that we created for Brian. And we are going to go to mesh and choose an anim class for Brian, which is also the one that we have just created. Let's choose that as well, compile, save, and now we have Brian set up to start animating. So in order to animate Brian, we are going to do a few things. First of all, as I said before, Brian is going to go from idle to walk and from walk to idle. So in order to do that, we are going to create a state machine. So let's go ahead and add a new state machine. And if you double click on that, we are going to open a new window called new state machine, which is where we are going to put idle and walking. So from entry, we are going to add a new state, and let's call this one idle. And if we double click on that, we are going to have the output animation pose. We can directly plug the idle animation to the result. Let's go back and let me change the name of it. Yeah. What we want to do now is to go from idle to a new state, which is walking state. And inside the walking state, we are going to take the walking animation and plug it to the final result. Now we can compile. We might have some warnings, but it's alright for now. And since after Brian finishing his walking animation, I want him to be able to come back to idle as well. And this is how we do that. But how is Brian going to go from idle and walking and from walking to idle? There is something called transition rule, which are these two half arrows over here, which is a rule that is going to be followed in order to make Brian go from idle to walking and from walking to idle. In order to do that, we are going to go to the event graph, and what we want to do is to check if Brian is moving or no. And in other words, we are going to check if the speed of Brian is 0 or not 0. In order to do that, let's start with an begin play, event blueprint begin play, and we are going to cast this to Brian master AI, and then we are going to get the object and try to get the owner of this pawn. So the function try get pawn owner, let's move these up a little bit, and then the Brian master AI is going to be promoted to a variable, and let's name it Brian. Once that is set, we are going to get Brian and make him a validated get. So if Brian exists and is valid, we are going to check his speed. In order to do that, we need to get Brian, and we have to check his velocity and get the length of Brian's velocity by using vector length. Once this comes, we need to promote it to a variable and call it speed. And from is valid, we need to go to set. We have to compile and save this. You are still going to have some warning because we haven't made the rules yet. But now, as we have a variable for Brian and the speed variable, we can go ahead and come back to our new state machine where we are going to set our transition rules. So in order for Brian to go from idle to walking, we are going to enter this by double-clicking, which will open a result and a boolean if he can enter the transition. What we want to do is to get our speed, and then we need to check if it's not equal to 0. So not equal float, and plug that to the boolean. So if the speed is not equal to 0, it means that Brian is walking, so instead of staying idle, we are supposed to perform the walking animation. Let's go back to the new state machine, go to the other transition rule, and get the speed again. And if the speed is equal to 0, equal float to 0, it means that Brian is not moving anymore. So he is going to stay idle. Once that is done, we can compile and save, and all of the warnings are going to go away. Now that we have created our animation and programmed it, we can close this for now and work with the Brian Master AI Blueprint class. And in this class, if you have this window open, you are going to open full blueprint editor, and here is where the magic is going to happen. Let us delete these two overlap and event tick, and we are going to get something from event begin play. We want to switch on Brian enumeration, and we need to create a variable to select which enumerator we are going to use. So let's call this one walk and change the type to an enumeration, to Brian enum, and plug it right here. Next, we are going to create a custom event. Let's name it walk2, and after switching to Brian's enumerator, we are going to call this function. Let's move these up a little bit. Now from walk to, we are going to use a function called AI move to. So this function has a few things to work with. There is the pawn, and there is a destination if it's static, and there is a target actor which we are going to use. So first of all, we are going to get our pawn and reference it to self, which is Brian, and we are going to create a new variable for the target actor. Let's name this one target1 and change the type to a target point. Once that is done, we can make this public and compile and save. And then we can plug it to the target actor. So now when the level starts, we are going to switch to Brian enumerator and get him to walk by calling the walk2 function, which moves the character, in our case Brian, to a target point. Let's go ahead again and compile and save and see what is going to happen with Brian. So in our project, in order to make any character walk, we have to add a navmesh bounce volume and make it big, so the character will be able to walk as he wishes. And by clicking P, we can see if the navmesh bounce volume is working properly, and the green colored places are where Brian can step on. So by clicking P, we would cancel that, we would remove that color. Now we want to add a target point for Brian. Let's add it anywhere. Now going back to our content browser, we want to bring our Brian master AI, and from the details panel, we are going to choose this picker to pick the target1 variable that we've made in the blueprint. So let's pick our target point and start our level. As we can see, Brian is walking very weirdly, and we are going to fix that. In order to fix that, we need to fix his rotation and we need to fix his speed. So let's open Brian up and go to character movement, and we want to check the max speed. Let's make it 150. I think it's okay. And for the rotation, we need to go to Brian master AI, right rotation in here. We have to uncheck the use controller rotation yaw. Once we've done that, we need to go to character movement, and orient rotation to movement has to be checked. Let's compile, save, and there is one more thing we need to do, which is rotating Brian to his blue arrow, which is the forward arrow, so he can face forward when he starts. Compile, save, and exit. So let's see now if Brian is going to walk properly. As we can see, Brian is walking properly, which means that everything is walking all right. And this is what we wanted to do. I hope you find this tutorial useful, and I would like to remind you that if you find my tutorials useful, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next tutorial.